All right, Ali Razavi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for
Appreciate
being
it.
here. Yeah, appreciate it. Cool. So it's been a while. We were just chatting right now. So I feel like when we bumped into each other like maybe a few years ago, like Costa Mesa or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then before then it was like we worked together. Well, I guess I should go into it, but we worked together like at James Bergner's office, like 2016-ish, somewhere around there, right?
Like 8 years ago.
Yeah, 8 years ago, exactly, right? Because that was like right before you started your firm, which is 8 years ago, right? But yeah, thanks for being here. I wanted to say, like, man, I've been following your career. We're Instagram mutuals, and like, seeing all your face on the billboards all over. You're like a local like celebrity. It's like I'll be like, oh, I know that guy. Like, we'll be driving on the freeway, and it's like, who hurt you? And I'm like, oh, I know that guy. I used to work with him. Like right next to like James Bergner's face. Like Sweet James. It's like, man, famous people on billboards. So I'm happy to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to see you again because I only worked at one place
Yeah.
before I went out on my own. So like
Mm.
the people that I met at that firm, like you guys hold a special place for me.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. It was like basically my first job out of college, technically second, but um it was like I tell my friends this all the time. Like it was a tough place to work, but I appreciated it because it really kind of like set the foundation for how I approached work moving forward. Like working with other attorneys and really like high achievers really set the bar for me in terms of like my mindset. So I lots of props to my fellow coworkers there, you included, and the owners there for really like setting me on the right path. And I feel like I got a lot from that. So
I I couldn't agree with you more. Like they set the standard.
mhm.
Like I always wonder if I didn't work there, where would I be now? Because they kind of showed you a blueprint of what's expected of you.
Right, yeah,
And it was tough.
mhm.
Not gonna lie, it was tough there, but I'm appreciative as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to go into like how I know you. So like I mentioned, we worked at James Bergner's law firm back in 2016ish, maybe a year before that. I was in liens and negotiations, and then accounting, and then you were in intake, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then you were studying for the bar, you passed, and then you had the ceremony thing like in the office, I believe. Yeah, I remember I was there too, and I think maybe you posted photos or maybe they sent out photos, but I remember that you had like really long hair back then, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to bring it back.
Yeah, nice. Let's see. And then yeah, you passed the bar, and then since then, like maybe the following year or the year that year you started your own firm, and then you set out on your own, and then you've been growing it ever since, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and I've been following you and like your nice Instagram stories with your suits and like your nice cars and everything. I'm like, man, this guy is living the dream. So yeah, happy for your success, man. And yeah, I've been wanting to bring you on the show. Hopefully, you can pass on some of your lessons learned and wisdom and leadership to our audience. So yeah, so I'm pretty excited and looking forward to it.
I'm happy to, but you gotta still teach me how to dance.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I get the amount of people who have asked me to. Okay, here weird tangent. So now, when I have a new workplace, I don't tell them I dance because if I start with that, I become the dance guy. Like Clark Fielding, right?
Yeah, of course.
Every time he would see me, not every time, but like he would see me in the hallway and he'd be like, "Dance battle, Marlo, let's go!" And I'm like, I'm just trying to cut these checks, but Clark is super cool. But yeah, so then every place I worked at after that, I would hold off on that information, and then later on they find out that I dance, and then it's like a surprise. Um, but yeah, that's because of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Any other clarifications? Other than that, what we said, I will have read your bio by the time they get to this point. But anything you want to clarify?
No, perfect.
Cool. All right, so let's go into our first topic. So the first one is usually origin story, kind of like connecting the dots from the main influences you had, let's say growing up until where you are now, like connecting the dots on what led you to here, getting into law, going to law school, starting your own firm. Want to start with there?
Sure. Um, Funny enough, it was a story that I told you guys when I passed the bar. James Bergen asked me to give them a story,
Yeah.
and my story was when I was 6 years old. My first grade teacher asked me to draw who you want to be when you grow up, and my grandfather was an attorney. My dad's biggest dream was for one of his kids to become an attorney. So at 6 years old, I drew an African American guy in a courtroom, and at the time, I thought O.J. Simpson was a lawyer,
Mm,
and so I was like, I want to be O.J. Simpson. I want to be a lawyer.
yeah.
And my teacher was like, I don't know what goes on in this guy's house, but definitely not the case. But to that point, I've known I was supposed to be a lawyer since I was 6 years old. Um, Brainwashed by my parents probably, but I'm grateful for them giving me direction. And my dad has his MBA and he's an entrepreneur, so I've seen him build and crash businesses since I was a kid. So there's that, and then his father was an attorney. He wanted me to be a lawyer, so I kind of knew since I was a kid I'm supposed to become an attorney. And when I got into law school, I realized I sucked at public speaking, and I was afraid of public speaking. So I tried out for the negotiation team and just to get my jitters out. And lo and behold, I make the team. Like fluke. Like I thought I did so terribly. I screwed up saying my own name. That's how nervous I was. And from there, I got picked up to be on the competition team. And from there, I got picked up to represent the school in an international competition. It was like 130 competitors, 40 countries, and I ended up being a finalist. From there, um, my coach was friends with James Bergener.
Mm.
Yeah, so full circle, he's like, "I want somebody that's good at talking to clients, and he's gonna be an attorney." And he's like, "I got the perfect guy." So I went from this hermit that's afraid of speaking to anybody to, like, my job was to talk to everybody. And so working at James's office, I mean, it was the best experience I could ever ask for. I mean, they set the standard of what's expected in the industry as a lawyer. And also I got an opportunity to talk to so many clients. I mean, I remember at the time we're talking to hundreds of clients a month, and I had the opportunity to do that. And I feel like as a brand new attorney, you don't get to do that. And so I did that, and yet, what you were saying earlier, probably by the end of the year, I went out on my own, and I started a little law firm out of my bedroom at my parents' house, and I got a PO box, I had a Google Voice number, I got a MyFax. I created my own website on Squarespace. Went into the county recorder's office. I couldn't even afford to open up a corporation, so I had a DBA, opened up a bank account, and I started putting out ads on Craigslist, affordable attorney. Come to find out, nobody wants an affordable attorney. It's like it's not sexy, like you
Right.
don't want it. That sounds like malpractice.
Right.
So I wasn't getting a whole lot of phone calls doing that. And I was doing a little bit of contract work. There's a lot of attorneys that either don't like going to court or they're lazy, and so they'll hire appearance attorneys.
Mm.
And for an honest day's wage, you can go show up. So I was making a little bit of money, packing my own lunch, trying to just figure it out, and it was tough. It was tough. I was meeting clients at Starbucks, and they're like, "You don't have an office." I'm like, "I'll come to you and try to make it look as nice as possible." But at the end of the day, it's tough. It's tough as a brand new attorney going out on your own. But what helped me out was twofold: was the experience I got at James's office. I knew how to talk to a client, and I knew what information I needed to see whether or not a client had a case. That was A, and B, I had my entire network is in Orange County, right? I was born and raised in Orange County, and people batted for me. When I went out on my own, people started sending me cases, and I was the one-stop shop to like everything. I was doing family law, I was doing criminal law, I was doing immigration, and somebody told me that, like, don't be the jack of all trades, be the master of one, right? Because it's just as an attorney in this day and age, you have to specialize. So what ended up happening, my friends and family started sending me car accidents. I remember this one particular case early on landed on my desk, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my career because I got a case I would never get. Friend and family referred it, and I knew what to do with it from what I learned from James's office, and that was kind of the seed money that's I reinvested and kind of took me to the next level.
I see. There's so many good points in that story, especially being that it seems like at that point where you were starting your own firm, you obviously didn't have like the infrastructure of the shiny building and the office space and like receptionists, but you had the skills from what you developed beforehand in law school, but also at James's office. So then when the opportunity arose and you got that case, it helped take off for you then, right?
Exactly. I mean, invaluable what I learned at James's office, and then having a strong network too. That's huge. I mean, they always say your net worth is in your network. Like if I had started shop in a completely different state, I don't think I'd be in the position I am today.
It makes sense. So I wanted to go back really quick. You said that you kind of essentially fluked certain parts of like, going through law school and then eventually ended up getting that referral for James. I can't imagine you just keep fluking for however many years and then you land at James's office. But were there any sort of insights, turning points, or things that you think helped you get to where you are? You said you were kind of like that. You were very different when you started than where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a new attorney, you're always gonna have, or new in any career, to be honest, you have imposter syndrome. You're always like, "How am I here? Like, do people know I shouldn't be here? Like, this is kind of crazy." Um, but one thing that I try to be true to is life begins at the end of your comfort zone, right? When you put yourself out there, when you're uncomfortable, that's a signal. That's your moral compass that you're doing something right. And I don't mean that in all scenarios, right?
Of course, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
but when it comes to trying something out, work wise, school wise, putting yourself out there, you've now I realized, and that's what I realized on the negotiation team. I separated myself from so many people by just trying. A lot of people, they just don't want to try. And they could be, and even today they're probably way better than I am, but they just didn't put themselves out there because of fear of rejection, fear of failure.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. So just showing up is half the battle, or whatever that saying is, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Another thing I wanted to ask, but maybe just like a quick TLDR, but for those who have never gone to law school or studied for the bar, what is that like? Maybe, and do you have any insider tips or yeah, advice on how to approach, like if someone is like, I really want to go to law school. I heard this guy, Ali Razavi. Do you have any advice for how they can navigate that?
Totally. Um, I think two types of people will be successful in law school. If you're just naturally just genius,
Mm,
high IQ, brilliant,
yeah.
or if you're disciplined and dedicated, right? There's no substitute for hard work. I don't personally see myself as this brilliant genius person. I mean, I finished at the top of my class at UCLA. I went into law school thinking like I got this, and it wasn't the case, right? There's some really smart people in law school. They just get it. They're fast readers. They comprehend quickly. They can analyze. They can conclude. And so if you're willing to put in the hard work, I think you're going to do just fine in law school. And they say in law school, there's 3 years generally. So the first year, the professors actually they try to scare you to death,
Mm,
right? You see all these movies about the Socratic method where they call on you and then they question you until you have no idea what you even read. And then the second year, they load you up with work. Generally have to get a job to set yourself up as a lawyer, and then you also have the same school load. So year 1, they scare you to death. Year 2, they work you to death. Year 3, they bore you to death.
mm,
That's kind of the saying goes because I think the scariest thing for law students entering law school is you know what you don't know, and then there's this third part of you don't know what you don't know. That's scary for people. So once you go through the first year of law school, you're like, okay, that was tough. That was maybe even the hardest thing I've ever done, but I know what to expect now, and it's not scary. I think the scariest thing for people going to law school is all of the horror stories they've heard. The the competitiveness, people ripping pages out of their textbooks so like they don't get the proper study material for the test. But I think if you do what you're supposed to do, read your cases, don't be lazy, work hard. You don't need to be brilliant. You just have to be disciplined.
mm. I love that. So, on that topic, or I guess maybe moving forward again, what was the impetus for you to want to start your own firm and like be an entrepreneur and all that stuff? So I know that you said you knew you wanted to be a lawyer because of family, and then your dad was an entrepreneur, and so maybe that was a combination of that. But some people become a lawyer and maybe they work for another firm, but then it's a different game, right? When you're playing when you are the founder and you're the owner of the firm. What made you decide to go that route, and maybe like any insights on lessons you've learned along the way?
Sure, yeah. It has to be the perfect storm, right? For example, my dad was an entrepreneur. Um, I knew I was going to be an attorney. The economy wasn't hot when I became an attorney. Uh, I applied for a lot of jobs. I mean, granted, I had a position, but the really top paying positions, they're going to the top ranked students at the
Mm,
school, right? Which I wasn't, honestly speaking. And so you have all of that going on, and then you have something like a few $100,000 in student loans,
Mm.
right? When you do the math doesn't math. You're like, I'm probably going to be working till I'm 105 years old to probably pay half my student loans,
Yeah.
right? So um, it was more of I looked at my life and I said, right now, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm still not married. I still don't have kids,
Mm.
but I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have a mortgage. My life will never be this cheap. This is as cheap as my life will be. And I was so blessed that my parents lived in Orange County. I could live at the house that I grew up in when I was starting off. And so I figured, bet on yourself. If you hit it, it'll be the best success story ever. And if you don't, there are jobs for attorneys. There's the public sector. There's different things that you can do. Like being an attorney is very useful in our world, in our economy. You might not be balling, but you're not going to be living on the streets. So for me, the risk of failing starting my own firm was there wasn't even a risk. It was okay. I'll just get a normal job.
Okay. So it just made sense to you, math wise, logic wise. You're like, might as well start my own firm. Cool. On that topic too. So now building your own firm, I'm very curious about this because I'm pretty, I don't know how to say, passionate about leadership or building team culture. And as someone who has built your firm over the last 8 years and has scaled, like you mentioned, um, do you have any? I want to ask stories, but also the second part of that is really just what are the insights or takeaways that you've learned along those 8 years on how to scale a business, how to build a good office culture and whatnot. I know it's a big topic, but we can start wherever makes sense.
Yeah. Um, what I've gathered, what I think has been really helpful for me is lead by example. I've been going to the office for 8 years, 5, 6 days a week, sometimes 7, but showing up to work every day, showing up on time. I require my entire staff to wear a suit
Mm.
every single day, just like how
Just like, yeah, just like
when we
James
work.
Burgers.
I took that because I thought, when you wore a suit and you went to work every day, you did better work. You felt more confident, even though you're on the phone. Your voice might be a little stronger, a little deeper, and I just feel like there's better work product because you got ready. You feel good about yourself. I think it's important to be confident, but I think leading by example, being supportive, not leading by fear. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in you know Marlo. You didn't do that, therefore you should be nervous that you won't have a job tomorrow, right? I come from a place of lead by example, and if you messed up, acknowledge it, and what can we do so that doesn't happen next time? Like from a very problem solving perspective, that's been really helpful for me because, for example, sometimes now at this point, upper management is like, why didn't you come down on that person for missing that phone call? Well, me coming down on them, what is that going to do at this point? It's not going to take us back in time. I want to know, why did they miss that phone call, and what can we do moving forward for that not to happen? That's more important to me moving forward, as opposed to me scolding you for missing the phone call because, uh, quite frankly, I can't go back and change you missing the phone call, and that's just a small example. So I don't like it to be hostile. I don't like it to lead by fear. I like to be problem solving, and I want to lead by example. I think that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's lead by example, like you mentioned, but it's also looking forward. The coaching aspect of that to help make your employees and your team work better is gonna be like a rising tide that lifts all boats, right? As opposed to like their motivation is to not get yelled at in that scenario, right? And that doesn't really promote the culture of like, okay, well, they're taking ownership and they're growing and they know that my bosses appreciate and value that sort of accountability and growth, right?
Yeah, I really like what you just said about ownership and accountability. I don't like, and it still happens everywhere you go, kicking the can, pointing the finger,
Mm.
right? I don't think that's conducive for a good work environment. Pointing fingers, because at the end of the day, your firm, your company, your business is as strong as the weakest link, right? So you got to raise the tide together, and you got to figure out, how can I fix the weakest link? How can we get that up to speed so that we're all stronger?
I like it. Um, I want to ask maybe last thing on building a firm is maybe what are some of the greatest challenges for building a firm, scaling and whatnot, and something that you can pass along on, what you've learned so far beyond what you already mentioned.
I think the most difficult aspect of building a firm or scaling it with your team is keeping them motivated. Uh, for you, it's your company. For you, it's your identity. For you, it's your creation. But how do you get somebody that's off the street to believe in you, to believe in your struggle, and to fall on the same sword as you? It's tough. It's tough, and so that's the most difficult part. And what I've found to be helpful is creating a path where there's growth in the company. Right? We live in an era where people want everything right now, here, today, and so showing them, with time, with hard work, this company has the ability to provide you what you want. And I'm not saying in the sense of sell them a pipe dream that's never going to exist. Build a company that can support their dreams too, and it doesn't just have to be your dream. And your dreams and their dreams can be completely different too. And I need to acknowledge that not everybody wants to be me, and maybe I don't want to be them. But finding a place for them, and I found that will keep them more motivated.
Mm, I like it. Last thing on this topic, as a personal injury attorney, what do you think people get wrong about the industry, or any misconceptions or things that people just don't know as opposed to an insider who might know that would be helpful advice or insights?
I think a lot of the public believes that all personal injury attorneys are the same. Um, they're all going to provide the same service. They're all going to provide you the same settlement. They're going to provide you the same communication. They're going to charge you the same. So it's as if you're purchasing a Rolex. Let's call it a Submariner Rolex. More or less, that Submariner Rolex, that year, that color, is going to be the same price everywhere you go. It might change a little bit, but more or less, you're getting a Rolex that there's a market value for that Rolex. That's not the same for personal injury attorneys. Personal injury attorneys can get you different results based off of their experience, based off of what they've seen. Um, Somebody could settle a case for very low because they thought it was a soft tissue muscular case, which is a big injury, or somebody can settle that same case for millions of dollars because your heart is also soft tissue, right? It just depends on how you skin the cat. So I think that's a big misconception. I think when attorneys do consultations with clients, it's hard to get that across because they're saying, "Hey, well, the law offices of Joe Bob is willing to do this case for 30%. What can you do?" Oh, what I can do is I can provide you honesty, I can provide you aggressiveness, I can provide you results. I don't know what they provide, and I don't even want to start thinking about what they provide, but two different services. I don't know who they are, but you can't compare apples to oranges just because we're both personal injury attorneys.
Yeah, that's really good insight. That's also something that I learned working at James Berger's office too. Is that yeah, you can shop around all you want, but services are different. You can't say that one company or one firm or one attorney is like the other one. So I think that's a really good insight. So I want to pivot a bit. Maybe it's not really pivot, but marketing and branding. I know you mentioned that as one of the topics you wanted to touch on. And so I mentioned before in this recording, I'm seeing you all over, right? Like all over town. The Who Hurt You attorneys, and I see your news article posts, and then I saw you on the School of Hard Knocks Instagram, which I follow too. And when I saw you come up, I was like, hey, I know that guy. Like that's cool. And that dude has like Shaq and other people on his page, so it was really cool to see you. And a Lamborghini is my dream car too. So I'm like, dang, this guy, man, he's living my dream. But yeah, respect to you. I really admire like all the hard work that you put in. But you mentioned a few things in that video, and I'll link to it as well, which is that page for people who don't know and check it out. Kind of like interview someone on the street and say like, what is like some really fast advice you can give. And you mentioned, never going cheap on your education, the importance of reinvesting into yourself. You mentioned the book recommendation, Never Split the Difference, which I read. It's on my Book Summer website. I'll link that too. It's a great book. And advertising and branding being like really important, especially for like the success of your firm. Could you maybe walk us through like, I guess, any of those points that you want to touch on? I know there's like a lot.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And School of Hard Knocks, those guys are awesome. They're super young and they're changing the game.
Yeah.
They're crushing it. So I was really happy when I worked with them. But to unpack that, branding and advertising is so important to generate business, which would lead to your company growing, right? And ultimately lead to profits. But something that I didn't get to say in that interview is spend your time and allocate your resources to honing your craft, right? Once you hone your craft, once you hone your product, then put dollars behind it and get it out to the public. So if you provide a good service, then you want the masses to know. If you just get the masses to know about your crap product, right?
Mhm.
You're going to get bad reviews. You're going to get no phone calls, and you probably get canceled the next day. I didn't get to express that during that interview because
Yeah.
I think that's very important. Is to be good at what you do, and you want to be better than the next person. So I think if you focus on that and you're like, hey, I'm actually good at this, that's when you decide to put dollars behind it. That's when you advertise and hit the masses. Um, Conversely, if you if you're good at what you do and you never put dollars behind it, it doesn't mean you won't be successful, but it won't amplify.
Mm.
It's not going to scale the way that you know your friend, the good old Benjamin, has your back, right?
Mhm.
If you put money behind something, it's going to grow a lot faster.
Yeah, that's very insightful. It's like work on your craft first because that's the most important thing. Because people can come knocking at your door and they're like, "Wait a minute, what is this?" Um, so I think that's a really good point. So on that, let's say someone's working on their craft and let's say they're decently good at it or whatever. How do you approach branding and marketing as someone who has, you've it's within your field of expertise? How would you advise someone approach branding and marketing? I know you said put money behind it, but is there something deeper than that?
Yeah, absolutely. The marketing and advertising, that's putting money behind it and getting it out to the public. But branding is, which I mentioned in that interview, it's your identity. It's your identity to the public. So you need to think what separates you from everybody else. And maybe that's nothing, and maybe that's your angle.
Mm.
That you're just like everybody
I'm just like
else.
everyone else.
You're just like, so there's so
Yeah.
many ways to spin things. But see what separates you. For me at the time, I was 26 and I started a law firm, and I was just called myself the modern lawyers, and I was young, and we're using tech, and like AI is taking over so much now. But at the time, AI wasn't super integrated, but we were still using it. Like being paperless for medical records. That was a big deal. So I was just showing that I could be faster and more efficient than some of these more senior attorneys that have been doing things in an archaic way. That was my angle then. Which now, if you're not using AI and you don't use it as support, you're just slowing yourself down, right? So the industry has changed, but then we transfer to the who hurt you. So to my point, you need to find something that makes you stand out, but connects to the public,
Mm.
right? Because in personal injury, for example, as a lawyer, my client could be the unborn fetus all the way to my 98-year-old grandma,
Mm.
right? I got a big demographic. How do you hit the masses, right? What's the message that hits the masses? And so you got to think about who your target audience is and how are you different than everybody else?
Mm. So how did Who Hurt You come about, or how did you discover it, decide on it, and how did you kind of leverage it or put the gas on the fire?
Yeah, I get this probably question the most
Yeah,
out
I
of
bet.
everything, and my marketing director at the time, we were designing our very first billboard about 3 years ago, And I don't know if he was listening to music or what was going on, but he made a billboard. It was my picture, showed there were personal injury attorneys, and then he's like, "What do you think about the text on this? Don't worry about the text. I'm going to change it, but what do you think about the location of the text?" And so I saw my picture, I saw injury attorneys, and then I saw "Who Hurt You" on it,
Mm.
completely, different font and all that. And I was like, "Who hurt you?" I really like that. It spoke to me, and so I was like, "I like Who Hurt You. Let me see something." And so that night I went home and I looked at the domain name whohurtyou.com, and it was like $3,000,
Mm.
right? And at the time, I mean, that's dirt cheap for your new company's website. So I went and snagged whohurtyou.com, and then I went and trademarked Who Hurt You. Nobody had a trademark on Who Hurt You. And so I knew now I had this, and just like I mentioned, once you have a good service and now you have the brand, you put money behind it.
Mm. So it was just kind of like a serendipitous accident. You're like, oh, that sounds good. Let me just see it. And you saw the opportunity and then went behind it.
Absolutely. That's a lot of what it is. It's where hard work meets luck, right?
Mm.
Hard work meets opportunity.
Of course, preparation. Um, let's see. One other thing that you mentioned was achieving 5-star reviews across the board. How do you approach customer satisfaction? I'm assuming that's a big part of it, right?
Yeah. I think that's number one. Number one is customer satisfaction. It, it's and you know this better than anybody. It's such a competitive field. Um, you have in economy in economics, you have perfect competition. Perfect competition being that anybody can open up shop. So I don't know if we're gonna sell clothes, for example. If you have the money to start that, or I'll take that back. If you have a lemonade stand,
Mm.
any of us can start a lemonade stand, right? It's who makes the best lemonade. It's called a perfect competition because anybody can compete. Personal injury attorney is like one step away from that. Yes, you're an attorney, so you have to pass the bar exam. But once you pass the bar exam, it's, in my opinion, one of the more simple businesses that you can run. Now, scaling it and being 5 stars, completely different story.
Mm.
But there's a any attorney can basically tomorrow, without doing any additional schooling, can say they're a personal injury attorney. Almost like how there's like more real estate agents than homes.
Mhm.
Same idea with personal injury attorneys. There's a lot of personal injury attorneys. So there's steep competition. So what are you going to do differently than everybody else? Right. And you got to put the client first. You have to put the client first. You have to communicate with the client. You got to keep them in the loop every step of the way. And you can't be greedy, right? You have to work with the client. And so that's how the method I've used to have 5 stars is I try to finish every transaction with the client. You're gonna have your ups and downs with clients, right? It's a relationship. But at the end, it's very important that we leave on good terms because that client chose me, chose my firm, and they also trusted us, and they have their friends and family, right? So uh, I think a lot of attorneys they stand on principle and they say, well, this is what my agreement says, pay me, right? People have different situations, and I think if you have that human element, that human factor, and the client sees that, you could also have 5 stars. I think it's something as simple as that.
I love it. Cool. That was great. That completely answers my question, and I think a lot of people get value out of that. So I wanted to pivot to philanthropy, and you mentioned buildlabetter.com, which we'll get into in a bit. I want to start off with, one of the things I admire about you, aside from your Lamborghini and having a lot of success and all that stuff, is that you're really big on philanthropy. Donating to causes that mean a lot to you, and I've seen on your stories too. Going to these events and you're putting your efforts and energies into things that you feel like matter. I think that's important. I think we should emphasize that, especially for role models. Like someone like you in the community to really give back or pay it forward. And so I wanted to ask you, like, um, well, we can go different ways with this. One is maybe I wanted to ask what organizations are important to you, or two, how did you get into philanthropy, or what's your philosophy on that, and how do you move forward with it?
Sure. I I think philanthropy is the most important thing for a business owner once they get to that level. there's a time and place where you want to do it, but you just can't, or you can do it, but not on the level that you want to do it. But I think it's as a business owner, and if you're a profitable business, it's important to pay back and pay it forward. And so I feel like the story I told you about my negotiation coach at law school picked me and gave me a chance and gave me an opportunity, and James gave me an opportunity, right? I felt like I was a very average person, and I still am very average, but I was given an opportunity. Um, and I was given an opportunity and I hit it out of the park, but I was given an opportunity. And so it's so important that I think everybody gets a chance. Everybody gets an opportunity. And what better than underprivileged children, right? From the very beginning. Because some people are just born into a social class. They're born into a country in the world. They're born somewhere where they don't have the resources to ever make it. Everything's stacked up against them, right? And so if I can give back to kids and just give them a chance, and it's what they do with it, right? But they had an opportunity, like I feel like I'm doing my part in this world.
Mm, I see. There was a who was that rich person who mentioned that? It was like maybe Rockefeller or something, where he was like spent the first half of his life building wealth and the second half of his life giving it away. I might be misattributing it, but you know that concept. I definitely subscribe to that too. Similar to what you're saying, like what is the point of success and wealth and whatever if you don't try to leave the world better than you found it, right? And I feel like you hear those stories about those very successful people who tried to give all their money away and it just comes back to them, right? I believe that. I believe that whatever you put out into the universe, you get back. And so finding those opportunities when we can, like you said, to give back and find those areas that mean most to us, I feel like we get the most in return. And not for that reason, but it just kind of makes the world a better place, right?
Absolutely. I think it's important. I echo what you said. I think the more you give, the more comes back to you, and I think it's such a crazy concept, but I truly
Andrew
believe in that.
Carnegie. Okay, there you go. It was one of those guys. Andrew Carnegie, Dale Carnegie, Rockefeller. Those are the rich people. But definitely, how did you so I guess before your business reached the level where you can make this sort of impact, was there anything that you were doing before then or anything that influenced you to have like this sort of mindset or perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we always donated to neighboring elementary schools, beyond blindness. Buying them materials, buying them pencil boxes and school books and things like that. But it wasn't until recently, we're able to donate six figures to Children's Hospital of Orange County, for cancer research, or um, Pencil for Promises, which they believe in education, and they're building a school in Guatemala. Uh, those those types of foundations are so important because that's our future. It's talking about kids at grade zero, giving them a chance, because that's when you're really changing the trajectory of their life, right? That's when they're learning how to speak and they're learning how to read. And, in 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, they're going to be running for Congress, right? And they're running our country. So I'm investing in not just their future, I'm investing in my own future too.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to touch on buildlabetter.com. So you want to let us know like what that's all about or what's going on to that?
Yeah. So it my heart goes out to everybody that's been affected either directly or indirectly by the LA fires. I mean, you see this on the news and you've seen it in the past, and you just never think it's going to happen to you. It's never going to happen to your neighbor. And it's devastating. One day it's the most beautiful, most expensive city, county in the world, right? And then it's burnt to ashes, right? And I was born and raised in Southern California, and I think there's a better way to build LA. And so my thought when creating buildlabetter.com is I have a big network, and I wanted to connect people, free of charge to my network. And whether it's legal aid. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, there's so many wildfire attorneys right now on
Mm.
social media. They go from car accidents to wildfire attorneys. That's that's not the angle that I'm trying to go. I want to get them connected with those lawyers if that's what they need. If they need help with relocation, if they need help with because their house burned down, the insurance company's not paying them. I want to get them set up. If they're injured from smoke inhalation, I want to get them set up with the lawyers. On the flip side, people have to rebuild their homes. If they need to get set up with contractors, engineers, architects, toxic contamination cleanup, um, uh, construction supplies, I want to connect people there. Um, and then I want to give out grants to people, people that have been affected by the fires, fill out their information and just cut them a check, to be honest, and just help out where I can. And I'm creating an icon where it says, join our team. If you're a professional out there that you want to be part of the network, or if you have additional clothes or food, or you want to be part of a drive, or we can get you know, uh, get different governmental agencies that are giving back, get them linked into it. So just kind of like the LA plug for fire victims.
Mm. Nice. So I know that as of this moment, you said it's not up yet, the website, but it will be soon. And this episode probably will air around March 10th ish, if I'm not getting my dates wrong. But so maybe what could people expect if they go to this website, or like what kind of how does that process look?
Yeah, I think it's going to go live by this week,
Mhm.
and you can go on the website and basically it's going to be a drop down menu of what you need, and then you're going to put in your contact information, or you can call, and then we'll get you connected with who you need. So I'm basically extending my network to the public.
Cool, perfect. So you guys check that out. I know again this is going to be a little bit later than when we're recording this, but I think it's going to be a really good resource for people. So appreciate that. Cool. So you ready for rapid fire questions?
Let's run it.
This is the fun part. I love this. All right. So not that you don't already have billboards, but if you can have a billboard anywhere that will reach millions of people, what would it say?
BuildLAbetter.com.
Perfect. We love it. What is one of the hardest challenges you faced in your life, and what did you learn from it?
You don't have to be liked by everybody. Um, it's impossible to be liked by everybody, and that's okay.
What? It's impossible to be liked by everyone? That's crazy. Let's see. Self-inflicted wound. So do you have a story about something that's gone wrong in your life that was your fault and you can't blame anyone because you did it to yourself?
There's a lot of stories, but I'm probably gonna have to pass right now.
That's all good. If you could redo one thing, what would you do differently?
Sounds crazy, but I would repeat everything the same way that I did.
Perfect. Yeah. And my follow up to that is most people say that too as a thought experiment. Genie in a bottle, like redo something, and you had to do something different. Would you do something different, or could you? Or sorry, what would you do differently?
I would have my parents invest me a little bit more so I can become a professional soccer player.
Ah, perfect. Love it. If you could give your younger self advice, any age or time period, what would it be?
Keep working hard. You're gonna have your day too.
Nice. Oh, you're like speeding through this. My fastest guess. Um, in the last few years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life?
uh, I think creating boundaries is really important. Creating healthy boundaries. You have a set of principles, you have foundation, you have morals. And I think in this day and age, we kind of deviate from it, depending on situations. You either want to be liked, or you want to fit in, or you don't want to make the other person uncomfortable. I'll give you an example. Maybe you don't like grilled cheese sandwiches, and your friend always wants to eat grilled cheese sandwiches, and just to hang out with them, you're eating grilled cheese sandwiches. Well, if you don't like it, don't do it. And it's okay to tell them that you don't like grilled cheese sandwiches. And if they don't like you for that, then maybe it wasn't a friendship to begin with, right? So I think, in 2025, I want to stay true to my principles and have healthy boundaries.
I love it. Who would you call successful, and how do you define success?
I think somebody is successful where they have a great work-life balance. So they're successful in work and they're also successful in their family life.
Mm,
I think that's really important.
nice. I totally agree. It's like, what's the point of Tony Robbins quote? What is if success without fulfillment is failure? And I feel like if you don't have that balance for the things that are important to you, then what is success,
Yeah.
right?
Why are we doing all this?
Exactly. If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you try, or what would you be doing right now?
I'd be doing stand-up comedy.
There you go. Nice. Did you know I do stand-up comedy?
No.
Just for fun. Like, just like once a month, just do a set, learn how to do it.
Really?
Yeah, it's super fun. Yeah.
That's if I was to like unlock my
Yeah,
next
yeah, yeah.
next level, that's what I would do.
Yeah, you could totally do it. So I took a 101 class and a 201 class at this theater in Huntington Beach. They teach you, it's like an hour long class, 4 classes. They teach you how to do stand-up comedy, and it's literally just like set up, punch, set up, punch, set up, punch, and then it's just going out there and just doing it. Because the teachers are like literally just write jokes, tell them, and then you bomb or you do well, and then you just keep moving forward.
That's
So
really cool.
it's easier than you think.
That's really
Maybe
cool.
I'll invite you out to a show and you can
Please, I'd love to
check it
come.
out, and I'll make jokes about you and then make you
Cool.
laugh and then be like, "Come up on stage, man."
Cool.
Cool, man. Let's see. Favorite hot take or something you think most people wouldn't agree with, if anything.
I think watching sports is overrated.
Mm.
I think whatever your career is or whatever you're passionate about, that should be what you're taking statistics on. That should be where you're focusing your time on. Uh, Going to a sports game, making events with your friends. I mean, having an experience with your friends is one thing, but watching sports every day or a couple times a week for a few hours is a time killer. And that next person isn't doing that, and they're investing in themselves. So you're kind of falling behind in life because we all have a finite amount of time in our lives.
Yeah, I love it. It's a really good hot take, actually. Um, what is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've made in either time, money, or energy, or etc.?
Going to school, yeah. Going to college and then going to law school and getting a graduate degree to just not only expand your mind but kind of separate yourself from the masses.
Favorite recent purchase within, let's say, $50 to $100 range that has impacted your life the most in the last 6 months or so.
I recently purchased these parking pads from Amazon for like $20 that you put on your wall when you park your car so you don't ding it.
Like so it sticks on your car or the wall or
Yeah, they're little pads that you stick on the wall
uh,
so in case you hit the wall, it's cushion.
okay, okay. So just like a small little thing. How much was it?
They're like 20
20
bucks.
bucks, yeah. And you're like, this is gonna save me a lot of money.
Game changer.
Nice, I love it. Thinking ahead. Last one. Any favorite books, movies, videos, articles, or any media that you share or recommend the most?
I don't know how appropriate this is, but I love Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What about it? I like the movie too, but what do you like about it?
I, I think sometimes you just need inspiration. I'm not saying inspiration how it ended,
Right, right.
but just that drive, that bigger than life drive to just win and be large and build something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. I would say that it's one of those like we're not putting the dude on the pedestal, but it's the energy that you can get inspired from and be like, yeah, let me take something from this,
Yeah,
get inspired by it. Yeah. I feel like good art does that good does that for people, right? Like kind of inspires you or makes you see something differently.
totally.
Cool. All right. That is it for rapid fire questions. We've come to the end. You are like one of my fastest guests. You've made it. You're speedy, man. All right. So ending questions. So I always like to end with gratitude. So Ollie, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my health and my immune system
Mm.
and being able to get up every day on my own and put in the fight. I think that's something that I take for granted, and in 2025, I made it a point to slow down, smell the flowers, because you talk about appreciating things, but you sometimes don't even know how to appreciate it. So I'm trying to now break down what I'm appreciative for, and I'm I'm really appreciative for for the most part being a healthy person.
I love it. Any final asks from the audience or any final takeaways that you want them to have from this conversation? So the first part, you can plug yourself. You can be like, yeah, check us out. But any final ask or any final takeaways you want them to have, or both.
I think if you guys picked up anything from this, it's don't hesitate to bet on yourself. It's gonna pay tenfold. Put it all on black and find us on buildla.com.
Yes,
Buildabetterla.com. Find us on build fi- new.
we got it.
Find us on build okay. Find us on buildlabetter.com.
Nice, perfect. All right, Ollie, where can we find you? Social media handles, websites, etc. I know we're gonna link your Instagram and your firm's website, but where can we find you if they want to check out what you're up to or that stuff?
You guys can find me at your lawyer Ali.
Perfect. Nice. All right, Ollie. It was great to have you. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot from this episode. I feel like I've been inspired just a little bit too, and hopefully our audiences as well. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here,
I
man.
appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And so for my final sign off, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, you guys learned something from this conversation. Just a reminder to always be kind to others, especially yourself. And you can always learn something from someone if you take the time to listen. So thanks for being here.